And welcome to the latest Boardwalk Potatoes. I'm Jake Smith, along with my broadcasting colleague, Bill Colley. Bill, good afternoon. We have a special guest with us today, someone that you and I know very, very well.
That is Julianne Murray. Of course, she is a Republican candidate for governor in Delaware. Primary day is approaching quickly. A multi-person primary, we should point out. But I'm hearing all sorts of chatter from friends in the Republican Party, and it seems that Julianne, I don't have the polling in front of me, but she may be holding a pretty good lead at this point.
Now, on Boardwalk Potatoes, we normally, Bill, you and I just talk together, but this is an opportunity to talk to a candidate who was so angry by the way the governor here in Delaware was managing the COVID-19 pandemic that she actually decided, you know what, I'm going to run for office. And Julianne Murray, gubernatorial candidate from the first state, 1 week from today, big primary. Welcome to Boardwalk Potatoes. Tell our audience, I mean, I know the answer to this, but our audience probably does not, why you decided to run for governor, because it's an interesting story in itself.
Okay, no, I appreciate it. And is my audio okay?
Yes, you sound terrific. You look great.
Thank you. You know, and just by way of backdrop, I want to give a little bit of detail on the lawsuit because it gives some context to what happened. You know, in Delaware, we had a state of emergency where the governor put a full blanket ban on short-term rentals. That included hotels, it included private property, Airbnb, any kind of short-term rental. There was a blanket ban, and it started in March. And in the middle of May, it was still going on, and there was no end in sight. He would not.
If I lived out of state and I wanted to rent a condo, I wanted to rent a house on the Delmarva Peninsula in Rehoboth, let's say, or in Dewey Beach, and I chose to do that, I was not permitted to do that by the governor, even though those rentals are very important financially to this part of the state. The governor stopped those rentals from taking place, thinking that these people were coming from out of state. They were going to bring the virus with them, correct?
That is correct. And, you know, and the thing is, I mean, so a lot of people had booked these a year in advance. I mean, so there was economically here in Sussex County, you had people who were having to cancel reservations because, you know, the owners were having to cancel them and refund money because they couldn't deliver the property. And so we're coming into Memorial Day weekend in May. Maryland had reopened, and that was significant because the Sussex County beaches, Fenwick, Bethany, all the way up into, you know, Dewey and Rehoboth, Maryland line is 30 miles or less away from the farthest. I mean, so some of them are 2 miles away, and people are now migrating into Maryland. So we're watching dollars leave in droves from Sussex County.
Now, these are dollars normally that this area would count on going into a spring and summer season, that these dollars were all of a sudden dried up because the governor was saying you can't do business.
Absolutely. And, you know, and my husband and I own a condo in Dewey Beach, and typically rented in the summer. And like a lot of homeowners second property owners who have beach properties, you make your money in the summer between Memorial Day and Labor Day, and that covers your costs for the rest of the year. And, you know, my husband was very, you know, I mean, both of us really felt that this, you know, the state of emergency had crossed over into, you know, unconstitutional territory. And there were several different issues I was looking at in terms of he had essential versus non-essential businesses. There was a ban on religious liberty that I was looking at. But ultimately, I picked the short-term rental ban because of the timing. I was looking for injunctive relief from the federal court that they would step in and put an end to it. And because of the economic harm heading into Memorial Day weekend, I thought that in terms of chances that the court would grab it, were higher than it would have been with the other ones. And, you know, and I picked Pat as the plaintiff because it was a perfect legal issue. We are Delaware residents. He is my husband,
right?
He is my husband. So it was Patrick Murray versus John Carney. And so Murray versus Carney is the caption of that case. And, you know, I picked him because I knew that he would have the backbone about any questions about it, but also it's a perfect legal issue. We are Delaware residents with a Delaware property that couldn't rent to another Delawarean. Take quarantine out of the mix. Because there's arguably, I don't agree with it, but there was arguably a reason for why there was, the travel from out of state was being restricted. But if you, Jake Smith, wanted to come rent my condo with no quarantine in the mix, you couldn't come rent my condo.
So you were at a disadvantage with Maryland, with the neighboring Maryland beach resorts.
Absolutely. And so I crafted a complaint in federal court that basically said that it was unconstitutional to have this blanket ban under two different amendments. The Fifth Amendment, most people know the Fifth Amendment as the right to not self-incriminate, but there is a part of the Fifth Amendment that has to do with takings. And the government shall not take your property without just compensation. This wasn't about the compensation. This was about the taking. They're taking it. They're giving us no remedy. They're giving us no ability to challenge it. They're giving us no end in sight. And it's a huge deal. So and let me know if I'm still good because I just lost your visual. Do I still have everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. And then under the 14th Amendment, no state shall create laws that deprive you of life, liberty, or property. And so, my argument was that this is unconstitutional, that, there was, that you can't do a taking with no redress. And it hit like gangbusters. I filed it on a Friday afternoon, and by Saturday morning, I had hundreds of emails from property owners who were saying thank you for filing that suit and for taking him on. And oh, there he is. Jake is back.
I was listening to you all the time. It's just the video.
That's okay.
But yeah.
But and that is actually, so that outgrowth of support and comment about finally somebody's taking the governor on is actually what got me into the race. Is at that point, two people had filed on the Republican side, neither of which had had any experience or name recognition in politics. The Republicans had not put up a single candidate, and I view this November's election as an opportunity because people are very, very, this is in May, now it's even more so, frustrated with how Governor Carney has managed this or not managed this, and that anger could translate into voters. However, I think that it has to be the right candidate. And so June 1st, I actually, I spent a couple of weeks getting myself together. June 1st, I actually announced, and my pitch has been that we need a fresh start. We need somebody who's coming from outside politics, and we need somebody that is going to appeal to Delaware voters, no matter what party. Whether you're a Democrat, independent, or Republican, you need, in order to unseat an incumbent Democrat governor, you need to be able to garner votes from not just the Republicans, from the independents, and also from the Democrats.
Now, Bill, tell me if I'm wrong. Delaware is the quintessential good old boy network, especially with respect to Republican politics. Julianne, as a woman, it's hard to believe in the 21st century, you weren't welcomed with open arms. Your candidacy was not welcomed in the Republican Party with open arms. Bill, you know this party here in Delaware as well as anybody. Tell us what your thoughts are. Julianne Murray, an outsider, a woman running for governor as a Republican.
Did we?
Is that a question for Julianne?
No, it was a question for you, Bill.
It's a question for you, Bill.
Well, I prefer to actually hear from Julianne on this one because
Okay.
I went through a similar situation here in a primary 2 years ago for Lieutenant Governor with a candidate that I was backing who was perhaps the most populist and the most Trumpian. In fact, she'd been a delegate for Trump at the National Convention. It was a five-way race, and the plurality came in, and she ended up victorious. And I think that's because you saw some of the establishment candidates split that vote.
Right.
But a lot of the hostility she faced as well is, again, she's the first woman ever elected to a position here in this state. And what you brought up, Jake, is it's 2020. it's hard to believe that we're still seeing some of that. But there's some very hidebound people, obviously, who see sometimes a newcomer, especially. It may not even be so much that Julianne's a woman, but you're coming in and you weren't a member of the club, so to speak.
Right.
You know,
Correct.
But I would think that's Julianne, that's got to be to your advantage.
Well, it's interesting. I think that I definitely have shaken things up, and and it needed to be shaken up. And and I think that what is so interesting about it is that I get it. I come from outside. Who the heck is she? I haven't. There's this whole thing about not coming from outside the party establishment. I haven't paid my dues. I haven't. In terms of coming up through. It's not my. Huh?
You've heard every one of those little cliches.
Every bit of it.
Political
every
cliches.
bit of it. And my response, which some people love and others don't, is, well, if you want to keep coming in second place, which is last place, let's just keep doing the same thing that we're doing.
Right.
But the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. That's where we are in this state. And, so I think that, but because of my personality in terms of my ability to present, I'm a trial lawyer. I am, I'm comfortable in my skin. If I'm talking to 2 people or 2,000 people, it doesn't make any difference. I can go off script. I can think, I can process, and I can, and I can articulate, and I can do it in a way that is very down to earth. Has been very well received by the Delaware voters. And when I started, I said to my husband, I said, I'm going to make the Republican Party have to deal with me. They're just and that's where I'm going with this. And they're either going to like it or they're not. And we're going to find out. And what happened is there's 5 regions. I worked each region in terms of whether it was a Zoom meeting or whether it was in person. Same messaging every single time. I am what I would consider a traditional Republican policy wise, and no deviation there. But here's how I'm different, guys. I come from outside, and the voters are going to like that. In this particular election, they are mad in the state and nationally at what they consider to be the establishment.
You're watching Boardwalk Potatoes. This is a podcast. Bill Colley, Jake Smith with our special guest, Julianne Murray. Julianne is one of the Republican candidates for governor here in Delaware, the first state. 1 week from today, there will be, Tuesday, the 15th of September, there will be a primary. And Julianne, I know on my radio show today, I asked my callers, who are you voting for next week? Every one of them said unanimously, they were voting for you. But there were 2 big issues right now here in the first state. Let's get to the economic one with businesses second, but I want to go to the next one because I think this is what scares people the most. The governor extended his executive order, this emergency executive order, last week by another 30 days, which is what Delaware law allows him to do. He keeps his executive power and then renews it before the 30 days expire. He now says that if you have a group in your own home of 10 people or more, he wants control of that meeting. That's what he wants to do. He wants to exert control. I think he wants to instill fear in people who are going to get together and talk about politics, especially his failing politics and perhaps those who work for you and for other Republican candidates. He wants to put fear in their minds. That's what he's done. And I think that's the most serious concern people have right now. But here in Delaware, only one Republican of note, only one has stepped up to the plate and said no to this. All the other ones have been remarkably silent. You have stepped up on this. You have objected to it. Tell us what your thoughts are.
It's a problem, and it actually, the attempting to control conduct within, the privacy of our homes. So to be clear, what he's saying is if you have 10 or more people that are not related to each other, in your home, everybody has to wear masks. And, so he has now breached our constitutionally guaranteed expectation of privacy. Absolutely. And, and what's interesting is, just 2 more things and then I'll circle back because constitutionally there's something interesting about that. But there are 3 other things in that same state of emergency that are all kind of equally problematic. One is that if you are, see what this makes you think of. If you are speaking, reading, or singing in front of a live audience, you must be 13 feet away and turn your back to the audience.
So if
you
you're
cannot,
a cantor in church or at a
correct,
service, you've got to face the opposite direction of the congregation and sing.
correct. Okay. The National Guard has been, is given rights to enforce. It opens with the National Guard shall be empowered by Delaware Health and Human Services or Homeland Security for enforcement. And then the last nugget that is huge is FOIA requests have been shut down since the state of emergency started. And it's going to continue until 15 days after the state of emergency has been concluded. So anybody who is looking for any information about, trying to drill down on why we're here and what's going on, all of those requests have been suspended.
So it's secret government now.
It is. It is absolutely.
And that should scare the living daylights out of every American, not only here in Delaware, but if he gets away with this here in Delaware, he can control anything in our lives. Any governor in any state can control anything, correct?
Correct. And I mean, bad precedent. But the thing about the coming into the homes, I was reading a law review article actually about, that your home is your castle,
right.
And, and search and seizure doctrine, Fourth Amendment. And, that there is a split in Fourth Amendment as to whether it's criminal or whether it's civil, and and the protections that you can have, about your entry into your home, and it is more protected in the criminal context than it is in the civil. So, to give an example on civil would be like someone who is receiving benefits or something, like a welfare check kind of thing would be considered kind of the civil arm of it. But in this case, the way that this statute, that Title 20, Chapter 31 is written, any violation of a state of emergency is a misdemeanor with a fine of up to $500 and potentially jail time. It's a criminal offense.
Right.
So this order falls under search and seizure doctrine about your expectation of privacy.
How interesting.
Absolutely. And so, so then the question becomes, so what now? How is it going to be enforced? What authority and under what authority are they going to do this? I mean, are they going to have drones up and look for houses that have a lot of cars around them?
They've already done that. This state has already done that. They've already used drones for law enforcement, for monitoring, for spying on us during the pandemic. So they've already broached that that topic. Chinese-made drones, by the way, but that's another topic.
No doubt. So what happens? So there's drones that are patrolling and see it. So now what happens? Do they just show up at your house? Are they? And what is more terrifying to me is that even if they decided they wanted to do this neat, tight, and legal, and they go and they get a warrant. Okay, so they get, because now, under Delaware's probable cause, they see these vehicles, do they have probable cause to believe that a crime is being committed? Yes, they do, because they can see, that they're going to make it, because that inference, that inference is all that is needed to establish probable cause.
And I said in my radio show today, and with the red flag laws, they can now look and see that you have a firearm in that house. They can go to a judge and have your firearms confiscated, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, in the time we have remaining, Julianne, one of your biggest assets is that you are a business owner. You've run a business. You've handled payroll and budgets and all those kinds of things. John Carney, the governor of Delaware, no business experience at all. He's only had public sector jobs his entire life. He has permanently damaged businesses here in this state. Restaurants, over $700 million in losses this year. $700 million. That's almost $1 billion. That's $750 million. Tell us what you can do to help businesses and why businesses are also supporting your candidacy. And then we're going to give Bill Colley the last question.
Okay, a couple of different things, and there's two different tacks that have to be taken in this. There is the pre-COVID economic issues, which were big business being chased out of the state by corporate tax, the actual rate plus the effective rate because of the gross receipts tax, because of the high energy cost. We have a carbon tax here in Delaware that, and, Bloom Energy, a whole different, kind of
We'll get into that
conversation,
another day.
about that, and then we're very regulation happy here in Delaware. So we've chased big businesses out. So we have to, there has to be a gutting of the, of the regulatory impediments right now. And, the gross receipts tax, which was supposed to be temporary and became permanent, needs to go away. Businesses are already suffering. So that's kind of one arm. The other arm is the small businesses, which are the engine of the economy. They are the ones that are going to be the biggest employers. Restaurants are the biggest small business in Delaware. We have to create a climate for the small businesses to feel safe operating. And we've lost 30%. We don't know yet how many small businesses we've lost because many of them have been trying.
The level of damage that's happened, we don't even know yet and will not know yet, probably to the first quarter of 2021, correct?
I would agree. And so they are limping along, which is, but there are, we need to incentivize them. And, and whether it's, low interest loans through the Small Business Administration, I'm not talking about PPP stuff or something. I'm talking about something that's Delaware specific. But I created what's called a Small Business Bill of Rights as it's a tool for the campaign, but it's also a pledge. And, I've had people say, is this law? No, I am not the General Assembly. It's a pledge, but it was intentional because it was to bring small businesses into this election.
Right.
We cannot go through this election without having a conversation about these small businesses. And part of, some of the elements of it are, we have to streamline things. We have to quit burying these small businesses in mountains and mountains of paperwork and regulations that they have to sort through. We are making it more difficult for them instead of simplifying it. And, it's counterproductive. And
I've always thought that, corporations love to incorporate here in Delaware because of our corporate tax law, but they don't want to do business here. They'll come and they'll incorporate here, but nobody wants to do business here. And that should tell you something. Julianne, I got to give Bill Colley the last word because we're running out of time. Bill, why don't you finish up the interview and then I'll let you sign off for Boardwalk Potatoes.
And I'm happy to come back sometime.
We'd love to have you back.
Not quite sure how much we have left here, but my memories of Delaware are Delaware Way and this notion that Pete DuPont set up this great system that was going to carry everybody through. They talked 30 years ago. They don't talk today. And you've seen some tremendous economic slippage, and especially in Western Kent and Western Sussex, that nobody's to address. A lot of Democrats out there, perhaps it's been like the boiling frog, they haven't noticed it, but you need their votes as well. How do you let them know that their standard of living has been dropping the last few decades with perhaps not even their knowledge?
There is an article that came out very recently that really is fantastic in terms of the numbers, and one of the things that, whether right, wrong, or indifferent, that I think is important in an election is the ability to present and give information in bite-sized things that people can understand. Okay, there are ways that I think that that pretty pictures that I can do in terms of charts, but also just some raw numbers that I can give. The median household income in this state has gone from 72,000 to 58,000.
Wow.
We are, we were projected before COVID-19 to have a recession in Delaware. There is no growth. And, so I think that, it is possible to, without, because this can't just be a bloodbath about Governor Carney, because that will turn people off. I think the message that I told to somebody this morning, you have to jab and pivot, so I think I have to give what the figure is. It's not squarely at his feet, it's partially at his feet, but then say, but look at this. So if we were able to, for instance, say in Western Sussex, there's manufacturing right now plants that are completely shut down. I mean, we've got real estate that, that could be used. There are ways within, the current national climate where we're trying to kind of shift production back to the United States from overseas, China or anywhere else, that Delaware has the ability to take some of this in if we can get the word out to those businesses and say, look, we're going to give you, whether it's a tax incentive or what we're going to do in order to get you here, but we want you in Delaware and we want to make Delaware friendly for you again. And I think that, that all voters, if I can say it just like that, that they'll go, oh, well, wait a minute. I mean, it doesn't have to just be, droning on that people do, I think there's a way to make it hit home.
Republican candidate for governor of Delaware, Julianne Murray, we want to thank you very much with Jake Smith and Bill Colley on the Boardwalk Potatoes. And of course, we want to remind people, if you like our videos, click on the subscribe button and you'll be getting notifications whenever we have a new one up, especially once Julianne clears the primary and heads for the general election.
Fingers crossed. We're doing everything. Now we're doing everything that we can. And, my biggest concern right now is whether we're actually going to know on the 15th, because with all of the mail-in ballots, I mean, I just don't know that we're going to know, but we'll find out eventually.
For Boardwalk,
well, God bless.
I got to say that again, for Boardwalk Potatoes, Bill Colley, Jake Smith, our special guest, gubernatorial candidate, Republican Julianne Murray. Thank you all. Have a great day. And on Boardwalk Potatoes, we will be talking to you very soon.
Take care, guys.